Oral questions by members.
Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. An expose in the New West Times draws some shocking conclusions about money flowing from the BC government to radical drug organizations. These organizations use the money to promote the NDP's safe supply agenda while people are dying in record numbers from addictions. Mr. Speaker, we're talking about taxpayer money being spent on partisan NDP policies. This is shocking, and quite frankly, it's destroying the trust in the government and in government programs. To the Premier, will you implement a full independent inquiry into your safe supply scandal and all of its tentacles, or will you continue to dole out taxpayers' money to out-of-touch pro-drug regimes?
Mr. Premier.
Honourable Speaker. Thank you to the member for the question. You know, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of British Columbians who have lost loved ones as a result of the toxic drug crisis. And our commitment to them, to all British Columbians, is to do our best to keep people alive. They have the opportunity to get into treatment, rebuild their lives. That's why we're opening more treatment beds. That's why we're making sure that they have access to detox and a chance to rebuild their lives. I think of the new facility serving youth, Orca Lalem, on the island, and interventions for people who are struggling in our streets with mental health and addiction issues that can't care for themselves, building those services out. What the member says is not correct. We had a very clear issue with an organization in Vancouver that took it upon themselves to break the law and distribute drugs, cut off funding to that group, sent out messages to all of the organizations, including peer organizations that we fund, that help deliver health care to individuals. We will not tolerate the law being broken. If you do so, your funding will be cut off and we'll support police in any prosecutions. It's a very bright line. It will continue to be a bright line, Honourable Speaker.
Leader of the Official Opposition, supplemental.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, let's have a look at just what some of these organizations are. So, for example, an organization called the Coalition of Peers Dismantling the Drug War received $60,000 from this government through the Community Actions Initiative. What was their goal? Repeal the Controlled Drug and Substance Act, release all charged under this act, defund the police, and expand non-described drug programs. Let's look at another organization called SUSTAIN, which stands for Substance User Society Teaching Advocacy Instead of Neglect. They received $60,000 as well to fund their goal of decriminalizing all drugs, including fentanyl. These are just two organizations funded to promote the NDP's drug agenda in 2024. To the Premier, given his abject failure of harm reduction, will you start an inquiry, demand our money back, and actually start investing in recovery, things like abstinence-based recovery?
All questions through the chair, member.
Thank you.
Premier.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. It was the hope of many people, myself included, and we had the support of the chiefs of police, that if we removed the criminal sanction from people, we stopped arresting them and putting them in jail or struggling with addiction, that they might take that opportunity to speak to friends and loved ones, to ask for help, be more likely to enter into treatment. And unfortunately, that's not what happened, or at least for a significant group of people, that's not what happened. What we saw was increased public use. What we saw was people feeling unsafe in their communities. What we saw was people who were in recovery feeling triggered seeing public drug use. So we had to step back from the decriminalization initiative and recriminalize public drug use. And we're going to make sure that we're going to try everything we can to support people getting into treatment, saving their lives.
Members, please continue.
And if it's not consistent with our values, if it's not resulting in the outcomes that British Columbians are looking for, then we're going to move in a different direction. It's an incredibly challenging issue, and we're going to do the work that's necessary.
Member for Surrey Cloverdale.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Free shipping. 10% off your first order is supposed to be the promotion for buying chocolate from a local store, not for buying ultra-premium cocaine. Online stores like Delix are following the Premier's example of normalizing drugs and pushing safe supply. They'll ship cocaine, MDMA, ketamine and psilocybin direct to your door. They're going to ship it via Canada Express Post, disguised as a box of chocolates. All you need is a credit card, no questions asked, no proof of age. Years of NDP drug legalization activism running roughshod through this province has emboldened criminals and has increased the demand for illicit drugs. When will the Premier show some real concern for the health and safety of British Columbians and intervene?
Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the member opposite for the question. I appreciate the member's passion on this issue, but if the member opposite wants to talk about drug and safe supply, I think we should talk about results. We're talking about taking the fight directly to organized crime. We have expanded police resources, enhanced drug seizures, and invested in intelligence-led enforcement. Just this
Let's
past
hear the answer,
October,
please.
just this past October, RCMP federal drug policing dismantled the largest fentanyl and methamphetamine superlab in Canadian history, preventing over 95 million lethal doses of this drug flooding our streets. This is the kind of action that saves lives. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to work with police to ensure that organized criminals are disrupted wherever they may be.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, this government will not play political games with people's lives.
Members, come to order. Members.
Mr. Speaker, we
Order.
will continue to support enforcement crackdowns on drug traffickers and bad actors wherever they may be in British Columbia. Thank you.
Surrey Cloverdale supplemental.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let's do talk results. More than 16,000 British Columbians dead, primarily from fentanyl overdose, and a recent criminal intelligence report saying BC and Ontario are the worst for cartel fentanyl production in the entire country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, our Premier has been a champion of legalization of drugs for years. And when he started his dangerous safe supply experiment, he said that the aim was to get government between people addicted to drugs and their dealer. The part that he left out was the government would be the drug dealer. This government has normalized drug use. It uses tax dollars to fund anti-police activists who are fighting to legalize drugs. They continue to run online websites that will deliver crack pipes and snorting kits right to your door instead of removing financial barriers to all treatment. Will the Premier stand up today and commit to defunding his beloved anti-police organizations that are fighting to legalize drugs and instead fund treatment, addiction, and mental health?
Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. The toxic drug crisis and the violence in our streets are the result of money laundering and organized crime. We're taking action every day to dismantle these criminal organizations, sending the message to the very top of the organizations that these crimes do not pay. We've passed, as you know, unexplained wealth orders, legislation that goes beyond merely arresting people. It takes the thrill out of the fast cars, luxury goods of high-level organized criminals. We're sending every day a clear message that our government will continue to take decisive action against suspected proceeds of unlawful activity.
Members.
The member opposite will know...
Members, let's hear the answer. Members, let's hear the answer, please.
The member
Mr.
opposite will
conclude.
know that we've seized the property of Hell's Angels in British Columbia in 3 specific locations in this province. Our commitment to this House is we will continue to seize illegal obtained assets brick by brick. We will demolish organized crime and punish those who profit from it.
Member for Saanich North and Islands.
Street sweeps continue across the province. This ongoing displacement of unhoused members of our communities is often dehumanizing, violent. In far too many parts of British Columbia, we've seen people displaced, dispossessed of their belongings, and left with nowhere safe to go. BC spent millions on the police enforcement of shelter bans, yet continues to make woefully inadequate investments in dignified and safe housing. And this is one of the wealthiest jurisdictions in the world. Honourable Speaker, through you to the Premier, when will your government make the investments needed to end homelessness once and for all through dignified, safe housing that meet people's needs?
Minister of Housing.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I want to thank the member for the question. We on this side of the House agree fully that everyone deserves to have a roof over their head. Everyone deserves to have a safe place that they call home. Honourable Speaker, what worries me, and I think what worries the member across the way, is too often people see the problem as homeless people themselves, when the problem actually is the lack of housing available in our communities. Honourable Speaker, we have made the largest investment in affordable housing in BC's history. Just to put it in context, 32 times more housing, affordable housing that is ongoing right now than when the previous government was in. 32 times more, Honourable Speaker. We are making up for lost time, and we're seeing some results. In Kelowna, 120 new units of supportive housing that we've launched. And the mayor has informed me, and the members from Kelowna will know, that they're seeing success. In the first 6 months, 40 people have already moved into the temporary housing and found their way back to connecting with family, employment, to stable housing, Honourable Speaker. I can go on with all the communities where we're seeing this progress, but I appreciate the member's passion for this important issue.
Thank you.
We're going to fight every single day to make sure everyone has a roof over their heads.
Member supplemental.
It's clear that the existing housing and sheltering options are not meeting people's needs. There's lots more to do. Each MLA in this House sees it daily. Emergency shelters are often unable to remain open consistently. Only rarely is there dedicated space for people to store their belongings. We must not forget that people experiencing homelessness are members of our community too. They deserve safe housing just as much as you and I. Through you, Honourable Speaker, to the Minister of Housing, how are you consulting people with lived experience to ensure all housing and shelter solutions meet their needs?
Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and I agree with the member that people with lived experience need to be at the table. And we engage with people who've lived experience on a daily, Honourable Speaker. We engage with them all the time. And I want to highlight to the member another community. Prince George had a real challenging issue with Moxon Flats and an encampment there. Honourable Speaker, working with local government, Honourable Speaker. Oh, the Leader of the Opposition has some comments on this. This is good news. He used to represent part of the community.
Members,
he should know.
Members,
Get up and ask your question.
let's focus on the question and answer, please.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Moxon Flats had close to 100 people there that were homeless, struggling for housing. What did we do? We went to the local government, we went to our Indigenous partners and said, let's create one table, let's find solutions. 140 brand new units of housing coming online, Honourable Speaker. We have one person left at Moxon Flats. Soon we'll be able to get that last individual into housing. Honourable Speaker, that's how you do it. You work with communities, you make some tough decisions, and I appreciate what the member is saying. We need to make sure that people who have lived experience are in the centre of our conversation, and I can assure the member that they are on this side of the House.
Member for Skeena.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Speaker. The City of Terrace has one of the highest overdose rates in BC. Indigenous people in the north are nearly 6 times more likely to die from drugs, yet this government continues to pour millions into its so-called safe supply experiment. Meanwhile, my community is still waiting for a fully funded detox and treatment center. Detox without supports is a death sentence. It leaves people physically sober, but mentally and emotionally in the same place, making them highly vulnerable to relapse and overdose. Mr. Speaker, why has this government abandoned the people in the north by not funding a detox and treatment center?
Minister of Health.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker. And thank you very much to the member and the critic for mental health and addictions for raising a really important question around supports for people who live in communities that are farther from urban centres and often farther from the supports that they need. And it's so important that we pay particular attention to remote rural communities, Indigenous communities, because connecting people to the supports that they need is a core priority for this government, for the entire healthcare system, but particularly, Mr. Speaker, in the toxic drug crisis that has touched so many people. Mr. Speaker, the honourable member is absolutely correct that we need to connect people to the services that they need, and that is the priority of this government. Mr. Speaker, over the previous years, we have funded over 700 publicly funded new treatment beds. We are supporting communities through the establishment of withdrawal management and connecting people to care, sobering and assessment, transition homes, supporting people with the supports that they need to tackle this crisis. Mr. Speaker, we're not going to stop that work. I appreciate so much the intervention from the member and look forward to working with her to help resolve issues in her community and communities broadly in the north.
Member for Skeena supplemental.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Through you, respectfully, that doesn't answer my question. Terrace has been asking for this detox and treatment center for over a decade. Terrace has a population of about 12,000 people, plus all of the outlying areas that don't have access. Indigenous leaders in the Northern First Nations Alliance have been clear. They need culturally sensitive treatments that include wraparound supports. The closest accessible treatment center for people in my riding is a 6 to 8 hour drive away. That is unacceptable. The success rate of detox alone is only about 10%, and that seems to be the only investment we can get in my riding. This government's harm reduction model is meaningless if people don't have access to the treatment and recovery that they need to escape addiction. This government has made safe supply widely available while failing to provide a clear path to recovery. Mr. Speaker, if this government is serious about reconciliation and saving lives, why hasn't it delivered Indigenous-led treatment and recovery services in my community? A fully funded detox and treatment center is operational.
Minister of Health.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and thank you again to the member for this line of questioning. Our government is committing to do everything that we can to continue to expand the full continuum of supports and services for people, from intervention and prevention through to withdrawal management, detox, establishing treatment beds and recovery programs for people. Mr. Speaker, I know there's a lot more work to do, and we are going to continue to do this work, supporting Indigenous communities with Indigenous-led treatment centres as are now being established in places around British Columbia, but there is more work to do to reach communities. In the meantime, Mr. Speaker, we're going to continue this work, offering centralized phone lines for opioid treatment, for example, Mr. Speaker, continuing with the investments in mental health for youth to help prevent these problems from beginning in the very first place. Mr. Speaker, again, there's an incredible amount of work to do, and I look forward to working with the member to get this work done. Thank you.
Member for Kelowna Centre.
Honourable Speaker, BC Housing funds Stevens Village, which is a wet supportive housing facility in Kelowna, making them responsible for the residents. But instead of keeping the peace, everyone is frustrated. Aaron Wells of Flamin Fitness, a neighboring business, had his store and vehicles broken into. Other constituents have come to me with concerns about assaults, drug deals, and lewd behavior, frightening them and their children. When will this government provide the support to fix the neighborhood while helping those in need get off the street?
Minister of Housing.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and thank the member for the question. The member would have heard my answer previously about the success we're seeing in Kelowna with unhoused populations. It's always concerning when you hear of a situation where there's people in the community that feel that better protections need to be put in place. We work closely with our not-for-profit providers to ensure that they're putting additional supports and safety measures in, whether it's fencing, whether it's cameras, etc. The member raises a specific site. I will have BC Housing look into that and get back to the member.
Kelowna Centre, supplemental.
Yes. Stevens Village is a wet facility, meaning it's low barrier and it allows residents to engage in illegal substances that this government has been peddling on BC streets. Even the staff know they're being abandoned, left to burn out without being able to help those in need or to evict those causing the problems. Stevens Village is failing its residents and the community. Will this government listen to them and provide them with the supports they need and make Stevens Village a dry facility?
Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Just for the member's knowledge that whenever a community comes forward with needs and requests for housing, the first thing we do is engage with them, the people with lived experience, the not-for-profits, to identify what the needs are in communities. We do have some locations that are dry locations. We have some locations that are lower barrier, because that's what's needed. If the member's got a question, she should get up and ask a question. But the consistent heckling from this member, Honourable Speaker.
Members.
It's a serious question.
Let the minister complete his answer, please.
It's a serious question. It's about vulnerable people, Honourable Speaker. We meet with community leaders, we meet with not-for-profits all the time to discuss what type of housing is needed. And the reality is both is needed. We need to make sure that there's low-barrier housing to get people indoors, to get them the stability that they need, to get them the additional supports, whether it's healthcare, mental health, or connecting with family. Honourable Speaker, we need both. Again, this site I can't speak to specifically, but I will follow up with the member after question period.
Member for Langley Abbotsford.
Mr. Speaker, this NDP government promised British Columbians open drug use near hospitals and long-term care homes would end. Yet, right beside Langley Memorial Senior Long-Term Care Facility, there is a tent where people openly use fentanyl, crack, and other hard drugs. This is not just reckless, this is dangerous for seniors, patients, and frontline healthcare workers. Mr. Speaker, why is this government allowing a so-called safe drug site to operate right next to a health facility meant for the vulnerable?
Minister of Health.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker, and thank you to the member for the question. I want to be absolutely clear. When it comes to illicit drug use on hospital sites in particular, that is not permitted, and our government has been very clear around that. The outside of designated overdose prevention service sites, and this is because the safety of people who use drugs, of staff who work in sites, and of patients around are of utmost priority. So, Mr. Speaker, we have established clear provincial policy to this effect. And Mr. Speaker, we are working to establish minimum service standards around overdose prevention sites or safe consumption sites on hospital properties. We're going to continue to move forward with that work so that we can ensure that we have a way of connecting people, the human contact of a person working with community service organizations and care providers to ensure that they get the connection to the supports that they need. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Langley Abs for supplemental.
Mr. Speaker, the Premier and the Health Minister assured British Columbians that these sites would be shut down. Sadly, this was just another election stunt by the Premier to desperately cling to power and willing to say anything to keep it. These sites are still operating, exposing seniors, families, and staff to toxic drugs and their fumes just steps away from hospital windows. Steps, Mr. Speaker. This government has lost control and completely lost the plot. Mr. Speaker, does this Premier take pride in this? Or will the Premier take action to shut this down? Or is this yet another broken promise to add to the growing list of government failures?
Minister of Health.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. It is absolutely no stunt to take this crisis incredibly seriously, to know that the toxic drug crisis has impacted so many people across British Columbia. And Mr. Speaker, we will continue to use every tool in our toolbox all through the spectrum of prevention and treatment and recovery to help people, to connect them to the supports and services that they need, and to keep them alive on that journey. Mr. Speaker, we have been very clear around the policy of overdose prevention sites. And Mr. Speaker, we expect health authorities whose jurisdiction it is to enforce this policy to do that work. But we are going to continue to work with people, with healthcare providers, with community support organizations to connect people to the supports that they need.
Members.
And to continue to build out a seamless system of care for people who are struggling with substance use disorders. Mr. Speaker, we are not going to stop on this work. Thank you.
Member for Kootenay Rockies.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Cancer, a word that sends a chill down the spine of every British Columbian, a word that has touched every community, shattered countless families and taken far too many lives. You would be hard-pressed to walk through even these halls to find a single person that hasn't lost a loved one, a parent, a sibling, a friend to this relentless disease. Radiation therapy is not an optional, it is an essential. It is vital, it is a life-saving component of cancer treatment. And yet, despite approving a new oncology treatment building at East Kootenay Regional Hospital, this government has shockingly excluded radiation therapy. How can this government justify excluding this crucial life-saving treatment from this new build? This decision is not just disappointing, it is unacceptable. Cancer patients in the Kootenays deserve better. This facility has the power to save lives, yet this government is choosing to deny them the care that they need.
Minister of Health.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker, and thank you to the member for his question and for his clear and obvious compassion for people who are suffering from cancer. It is a diagnosis that none of us would ever wish to face, and yet I am certain that everyone in this House has had a family member, a loved one, a friend, or even themselves who has had to face this terrible diagnosis. Mr. Speaker, everybody deserves and needs that access to care, and we are committed to building out a cancer care system across this province that is one of excellence. And Mr. Speaker, that includes investments, including hiring more than 140 new cancer doctors, for example, 93 new oncologists, opening cancer care clinics in places like Kelowna. Now, Mr. Speaker, I recognize that that's a distance, that is a distance, but Mr. Speaker, I've had the opportunity to speak with the Regional Hospital District Director about this subject many times, and explaining and talking with local community members about the importance of supporting people to get the best cancer care they can closest to home, and that in time, when the space and the numbers of people who are facing this warrant it, that these kinds of services can be added. This door is not closed, Mr. Speaker, and will continue to support people facing this terrible disease.
Member of Kootenay Rockies, supplemental.
So, Mr. Speaker, the minister's answer is to take a 7-hour drive. That's not a very good answer. You know, the demand for radiation services in East Kootenays isn't just urgent, it's at the breaking point. Over 3,600 cancer treatments are needed treatments are needed in that area every single year. And that number is just climbing. Yet this government refuses to provide the care that the Kootenay families desperately need. Instead, cancer patients are forced to travel 6 hours over 2 mountain passes to Kelowna for radiation. An impossible, exhausting, and sometimes dangerous journey for those already battling for their lives. This is ridiculous. Does this health minister seriously expect families already facing the chaos and trauma of a cancer diagnosis to uproot their lives and endure treacherous travels just to receive the basic life care that they should have close to home? Will this government reconsider and ensure radiation treatment is available in the Kootenays before we lose more lives?
Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you again to the member for the question. And I recognize, coming from a small rural community myself, that travel for cancer care is a burden for people. It is difficult to face, and it is one that is inequitably faced by people who live in smaller communities across this province, which is why we have worked to invest in assisting people in those travel costs, in overnight costs for certain kinds of cancer care, because we know that people need that help. Mr. Speaker, we are committed to continue building out our 10-year cancer plan, including the addition of 4 new cancer centres across this province that are helping people from rural communities across BC who face these challenges overcome them and get cancer care closer to home. Mr. Speaker, we will continue this work and we will not stop.
The bell ends the question period.